The rideshare charges started showing up in March. 17 trips to the same address on East 73rd Street, always between 2 and 4 in the afternoon. Always on days when Nira claimed she was at her wellness consultations or brand meetings. I stared at our shared credit card statement on my laptop screen, sitting in my home office while she took her third shower of the day. The water had been running for 20 minutes now, which meant she was either having an existential crisis about her latest Instagram post or washing off evidence of whatever the hell she'd been doing on East 73rd Street. My name is Brooks Carven, and I'm about to tell you how my wife's affair became the best thing that ever happened to me. Brooks! Nira's voice echoed from our marble bathroom. Can you grab my phone? I left it on the kitchen counter. I closed the laptop and walked to the kitchen of our Upper West Side apartment. The place cost more than most people's houses, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park and enough square footage to house a small village. Nira had insisted on it when my tech consulting business started pulling in serious money. We need to look successful to be successful, she'd said, practicing her motivational speaker voice. Her phone sat next to a half-empty green smoothie and yesterday's mail. The screen lit up as I picked it up, showing 3 missed calls from R and a text preview that made my stomach drop. Can't wait to taste you again. I set the phone down like it had caught fire. 22 years of marriage. And this was how I found out. Not through some dramatic confrontation or suspicious behavior I'd been tracking for months. Just a text message that popped up while I was being a helpful husband. Did you find it? Nira called. Yeah, bringing it now. I walked back toward our bedroom, phone in hand, mind racing. The smart play would be to confront her immediately. The emotional play would be to throw the phone against the wall and demand answers. But I'd built a successful business by being neither smart nor emotional in the conventional sense. I'd built it by being strategic. The bathroom door opened as I approached, releasing a cloud of lavender-scented steam. Nira emerged, wrapped in a white towel, her dark hair slicked back, looking like she'd just stepped out of a spa commercial, which, knowing her Instagram feed, she probably had. Thanks, babe. She took the phone without looking at me, immediately checking her notifications. I watched her face for any sign of guilt, panic, or acknowledgement of what I'd seen. Nothing. She scrolled through messages with the same expression she used to review her follower analytics. Who's R? I asked, keeping my voice casual. Her thumb paused for just a fraction of a second. What? Your phone showed a missed call from R when I picked it up. Just curious. Oh, that's Rebecca. You know, from the wellness brand collaboration. She didn't look up from the screen. She's been helping me with some new content ideas. Rebecca. Right. I'd met Rebecca exactly once, at some influencer event Nira had dragged me to. Rebecca was a 60-year-old former yoga instructor who spoke exclusively in whispers and smelled like patchouli. The odds of Rebecca sending a text about tasting anything were roughly the same as me becoming a professional ballet dancer. Cool, I said. What kind of content? Just some partnership stuff. Nothing too exciting. Nira finally looked at me, her smile bright and practiced. What are you up to today? More boring computer stuff? My boring computer stuff paid for her lifestyle, but I let it slide. Meeting with a client this afternoon, might run late. Perfect, I have a thing anyway. A thing. On East 73rd Street, apparently. I went back to my office and opened the laptop again. 20 years of marriage had taught me that Nira's lies came in layers, like an onion made of bullshit. The rideshare charges were just the outer layer. If I wanted the truth, I'd have to dig deeper. I started with social media. Nira's Instagram showed the usual parade of green smoothies, yoga poses, and inspirational quotes overlaid on sunset photos. But her tagged photos told a different story. 3 weeks ago, someone named Rowan Carrick had posted a picture from some wellness retreat in the Hamptons. Nira was in the background, laughing at something off camera. I clicked on Rowan's profile and immediately understood why my wife was taking 3 showers a day. The guy looked like he'd been assembled by a committee of romance novel cover designers. 6-foot-something, perfectly tousled brown hair, the kind of jawline that probably had its own Instagram account. His bio read, lifestyle coach. Former model, helping you live your best life, followed by a string of meaningless hashtags. I scrolled through his posts, shirtless workout videos, motivational quotes about breaking free from limiting relationships, photos from expensive restaurants and exotic locations, and there, buried among the narcissistic nonsense, was a picture from last Tuesday. A coffee cup on a marble table with the caption, "Perfect afternoon with a perfect soul." The marble table was in our kitchen. I leaned back in my chair, processing this information. My wife was having an affair with a lifestyle coach who looked like a Ken doll and apparently had the intellectual depth of a puddle. The cliché of it all was almost insulting. My phone buzzed. A text from Felix roared, my old contact from the airline industry who'd transitioned into what he called problem solving for wealthy clients. Felix was the kind of guy who could get you a table at a booked restaurant, tickets to a sold-out show, or a new identity if you were willing to pay for it. We'd stayed friends after I'd helped him set up his business's computer systems. Drinks tonight? Got some stories that'll make you feel better about your life. I stared at the message for a moment, then typed back, "Actually, I might have some stories for you." The water started running again. Shower number 4. I spent the rest of the morning doing actual work, helping a pharmaceutical company debug their inventory management system. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was fixing other people's problems while my own life was falling apart. But the work kept my mind occupied, and by lunch, I'd almost convinced myself that maybe I was overreacting. Maybe Rowan was just a friend. Maybe the text about tasting was taken out of context. Maybe my wife of 22 years deserved the benefit of the doubt. Then I heard Nira on the phone in the bedroom, her voice low and breathy in a way I hadn't heard directed at me in years. "I can't wait either," she was saying. "Brooks is working late, so we'll have plenty of time." No, he doesn't suspect anything. He's too buried in his computers to notice what's happening in the real world. I stood in the hallway outside our bedroom, listening to my wife plan her afternoon with another man while simultaneously dismissing me as an oblivious tech nerd. The anger hit me like a physical force, but underneath it was something else. Something that felt almost like relief. For months, I'd been wondering why our marriage felt like a business arrangement, why conversations with Nira felt like negotiations, why I'd started working late not because I had to, but because I wanted to avoid going home. Now I had my answer. "Okay, I'll see you at 2, Nira continued. "And Rowan? Wear the cologne I like." I walked back to my office and closed the door. Then I opened a new browser window and started researching flights to Paris. If my wife wanted to play games, I'd show her what a real game looked like. Felix and I met at a bar in Midtown, the kind of place where the whiskey cost more per shot than most people spent on dinner. He was already waiting when I arrived, nursing a scotch and scrolling through his phone. "You look like someone who just found out his accountant's been stealing," he said as I sat down. "Worse, I found out my wife's been cheating." Felix set down his phone and gave me his full attention. "How bad?" I told him everything. The rideshare charges, the text messages, the phone call I'd overheard. Felix listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or making small sounds of disgust. "So what's the plan?" he asked when I finished. "Divorce lawyer? Private investigator? I know people." "Actually, I was thinking about taking a trip." "Running away? That's not like you, Brooks." "Not running away, strategic repositioning." I pulled out my phone and showed him the flight booking website I'd been browsing. "Paris, 2 weeks, starting tomorrow." Felix raised an eyebrow. "Revenge travel? I like it, but what's the endgame?" Nira's always wanted to go to Paris. We've talked about it for years, but there was always some excuse. Too expensive, too busy, not the right time. Meanwhile, she's been telling her followers about her dream trip to the City of Light for her entire influencer career. And now you're going without her. With someone else, actually. I took a sip of my whiskey. Her sister, Selah. Felix nearly choked on his drink. "You're taking your sister-in-law to Paris while your wife cheats with a lifestyle coach? That's either brilliant or insane." Selah's a photographer. She's been wanting to build a portfolio of European architecture. I'm offering to fund the trip in exchange for some professional photos for my business website. I shrugged. Perfectly innocent, perfectly explainable, and perfectly calculated to drive Nira absolutely crazy. "You devious bastard." Felix grinned. "I love it. What do you need from me?" "Hotel recommendations, restaurant reservations, the kind of trip that looks amazing on social media." "Consider it done." Felix pulled out his phone and started making notes. "What about the Ken doll? You going to deal with him too?" "One thing at a time. First, I want to see how Nira reacts when she realizes I'm not the oblivious computer nerd she thinks I am." I finished my drink and stood up. I should get home. Need to pack for my trip." "Brooks." Felix grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. "Be careful. Revenge is a dish best served cold, but it can also burn down your whole kitchen if you're not careful." "Don't worry," I said. "I'm not looking to burn anything down. I just want to rearrange the furniture." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I got home around 9 to find Nira on the couch, posting Instagram stories about her amazing wellness session and connecting with inspiring people. She looked up when I walked in, her expression bright and innocent. "How was your client meeting?" "Productive. How was your thing?" "Really good. Rebecca has some amazing ideas for content collaboration." I nodded and headed toward the bedroom. "I need to pack tonight." "Pack? For what?" I turned back to her, keeping my expression neutral. "Paris. Business trip. Leaving tomorrow morning." The look of shock on her face was worth the price of admission. "Paris? Tomorrow? You didn't mention any business trip?" "It came up today. Client wants me to consult on a project with their European office. Could be gone for a couple of weeks." "A couple of weeks?" Her voice had gone up an octave. "Brooks, you can't just disappear to Paris for 2 weeks without discussing it with me." "Why not? You make plans without discussing them with me all the time?" She stood up from the couch, her phone forgotten. "That's different. My work is flexible, but Paris? This is huge. We should go together. Make it a romantic getaway." The irony was so thick I could have cut it with a knife. "Sorry, but it's a working trip. Besides, don't you have that wellness retreat coming up?" I didn't wait for her answer. I went to the bedroom and started packing, listening to her pace around the living room, making increasingly frantic phone calls. First to her sister, then to her manager, then to someone she kept calling Babe in a voice I recognized from this afternoon. By the time I finished packing, she was standing in the bedroom doorway with tears in her eyes. "Brooks, please, we need to talk about this." "About what?" "About us. About everything." I looked at her for a long moment, this woman I'd been married to for over 2 decades, who'd been lying to my face for months while planning her future with another man. "You're right," I said finally. "We do need to talk, but not tonight." I closed my suitcase and set it by the door. "I'll call you from Paris." The last thing I saw before turning off the light was Nira sitting on our bed, staring at her phone with an expression I'd never seen before. For the first time in months, she looked genuinely worried. It was a good look on her. The Air France flight took off at 8:30 the next morning, which meant I was wheels up before Nira had even finished her first cup of coffee. I'd left her a note on the kitchen counter next to her phone. "Gone to Paris. Back in 2 weeks. Don't wait up." B, short, sweet, and guaranteed to ruin her day. Salah was waiting for me at Charles de Gaulle Airport, looking exactly like what she was, a 28-year-old artist who'd just been handed a free trip to Paris by her brother-in-law. She had Nira's dark hair, but none of her calculated glamour, wearing jeans and a vintage leather jacket that looked like it had seen actual adventures. "I still can't believe you're doing this," she said as we waited for our luggage. "When you called last night, I thought you were having some kind of breakdown." "Maybe I am. But if I'm going to have a breakdown, might as well do it in the most beautiful city in the world." Salah studied my face. "This is about Nira, isn't it?" I'd told her the trip was business-related, but Salah had always been perceptive. It came with being the younger sister of someone like Nira. You learned to read between the lines. "Let's just say your sister and I are going through a rough patch. Rough enough that you're flying me to Paris instead of her? Rough enough that I need some time to think, and you need portfolio shots. It's a win-win." The taxi ride into the city gave me my first real taste of what I'd been missing. Paris in April was everything the travel magazines promised. Tree-lined boulevards coming alive with spring, sidewalk cafes filling with the lunch crowd, the kind of effortless elegance that made New York feel like a construction site in comparison. Felix had booked us rooms at a boutique hotel in the 7th arrondissement, walking distance from the Eiffel Tower, but tucked away on a quiet street that felt like a secret. My room had a small balcony overlooking a courtyard where an old man was tending to flower boxes while his cat supervised from a windowsill. I sat on the balcony with my laptop and a cup of coffee that was better than anything I'd had in the past 5 years, checking my messages. 3 missed calls from Nira, 2 voicemails, and a string of texts that started concerned and escalated to frantic. "Brooks, call me when you land." "Are you okay? This isn't like you." "I'm worried. Please just text me back." "This is ridiculous. You can't just disappear to Paris without talking to me." "Brooks, I'm serious. Call me right now." I deleted the messages without responding and opened Instagram instead. Time to let the games begin. The photo I posted was simple, a shot of my coffee cup on the balcony railing with the Eiffel Tower visible in the background. The caption read, "Sometimes you need to change your perspective. Peut-être Paris, new beginnings, life is short." I tagged the location and hit share, then put my phone on silent and went to meet Selah for lunch. She was waiting at a cafe around the corner, already deep in conversation with the waiter about the best locations for architectural photography. Her French was rusty but enthusiastic, and the waiter was clearly charmed by her genuine excitement about the city. "Any word from Nira?" she asked as I sat down. I'm sure there will be, but I'm not checking my phone today. Brooks! Salah leaned forward, her expression serious. I need to tell you something about my sister. You don't have to. Yes, I do. She glanced around the cafe, then lowered her voice. She's been different lately, more secretive, more, I don't know, calculating. She asked me weird questions about you a few weeks ago. What kind of questions? About your work, how much money you make, whether you'd fight for your marriage if it came down to it. Selah picked at her salad. At the time, I thought she was just being paranoid about your relationship. Now I'm wondering if she was planning something. The waiter brought my lunch, but I'd lost my appetite. Planning what? I don't know, but Nira doesn't do anything without a strategy. She's been building her brand for years, positioning herself as this wellness guru with the perfect marriage and the perfect life. If that image is threatened, she'd do whatever it takes to protect it. Or find a way to come out looking like the victim. I thought about this as we walked along the Seine that afternoon, Selah stopping every few blocks to photograph bridges and buildings while I tried to process what she'd told me. Had Nira's affair been planned as something more than just cheating? Was I missing a bigger picture? My phone buzzed with a call from Felix. I answered on the second ring. How's Paris? Beautiful. Complicated. How are things in New York? Interesting. Your wife's been making some calls, asking about divorce lawyers, specifically ones who specialize in high-asset cases. I stopped walking. When? This morning, about 2 hours after you posted that Instagram photo. My contact at the law firm said she was asking about New York's equitable distribution laws and whether international travel could be considered abandonment of the marriage. She works fast. There's more. She also called a private investigator. Wants someone to document your trip to Paris. Specifically, she wants photos of you with Selah. I looked over at Selah, who was photographing a flower vendor near Notre Dame, completely oblivious to the conversation. She's setting me up. Looks like it. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I watched Selah laugh at something the flower vendor said, her face bright with the kind of joy that Nira had been faking for years. I'm going to give her exactly what she wants. Brooks, but not the way she expects it. That evening, I took Selah to dinner at a restaurant Felix had recommended, a small place in Montmartre where the tables were close together and the lighting was soft and romantic. It was exactly the kind of place that would photograph beautifully, exactly the kind of setting that would look damning to someone who wanted it to. This feels like a date, Selah said as we were seated at a table by the window. Good, that's the point. I explained my conversation with Felix, watching her expression shift from confusion to anger to something that looked like determination. So she's trying to frame you for having an affair while she's actually having one? That's the theory. Selah was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the lights of the city. You know what? Fine. Let's give her a show. She pulled out her phone and angled it to capture both of us with the restaurant's romantic ambiance in the background. Smile, Brooks. Time to make your wife very unhappy. The photo she posted was a masterpiece of subtle suggestion. We looked comfortable together, intimate without being obvious, like two people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. The caption was perfect. Sometimes the best conversations happen in the most beautiful places. Thank you, Brooks Carven, for an unforgettable evening. Paris, grateful heart, unexpected joys. We posted it simultaneously to our Instagram accounts, tagged the restaurant, and then put our phones away to enjoy dinner. The food was incredible, the wine was better, and for the first time in months, I found myself actually relaxing. Can I ask you something? Selah said over dessert. Shoot. When did you know? About Nira, I mean. I told her about the rideshare charges, the text messages, the phone call I'd overheard. She listened without judgment, occasionally shaking her head or making small sounds of disgust. I'm sorry, Brooks. I know she's my sister, but what she's doing is unforgivable. The cheating or the setup? Both. But honestly, the setup is worse. Cheating is weakness. What she's doing now is calculated cruelty. We walked back to the hotel through streets that sparkled with evening light, past couples strolling hand in hand, and groups of friends laughing over wine at sidewalk cafes. It was the kind of night that made you believe in romance, in possibility, in the idea that life could be beautiful if you were brave enough to reach for it. Brooks? Selah stopped walking as we reached the hotel entrance. Yeah? Whatever happens with Nira, I want you to know that you deserve better. You deserve someone who sees you for who you really are, not just what you can provide. She kissed my cheek, quick and friendly, but I noticed the photographer across the street capture the moment with a long lens. Nira's private investigator, no doubt. I smiled and waved at the camera. Let her have her photos. I was just getting started. The next morning brought a flood of messages from Nira, each one more desperate than the last. But there were also messages from people I hadn't heard from in months. Old friends, business contacts, even my college roommate, all commenting on my Instagram posts and asking about my trip to Paris. "Living your best life," one friend had written. "About time you took a vacation," said another. "Paris looks amazing on you, bro. Keep the posts coming." I realized that somewhere along the way, I'd stopped sharing my life with anyone except Nira. My social media had become an extension of hers, focused on her brand and her image. When was the last time I'd posted something just because it made me happy? I spent the morning walking through the Louvre with Selah, watching her work as she photographed everything from the building's architecture to the way light fell through the glass pyramid. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and I found myself seeing the city through her eyes, not as a backdrop for social media posts, but as a living, breathing work of art. "You're different here," she said as we sat in the museum's courtyard, sharing a bottle of water and watching tourists pose for selfies. "Different how?" "Lighter. More like yourself. In New York, you always seem like you're performing some version of who you think you should be. Here, you just are." It was true. In Paris, I wasn't Nira's husband, or the guy who paid for her lifestyle, or the tech nerd who worked too much. I was just Brooks, a man in his late 30s discovering what it felt like to be spontaneous. My phone rang. Nira's name appeared on the screen. "You should answer it," Selah said. "She's probably losing her mind." I accepted the call. "Hello, Nira." "Brooks, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for 2 days." "I've been busy. Paris is amazing." "I saw your Instagram posts." Her voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "With my sister." Selah is a great travel companion, very knowledgeable about art and architecture. "Brooks, what the hell is going on? You disappear to Paris without warning, you're posting romantic photos with my sister, and you won't return my calls. This isn't like you. Maybe you don't know me as well as you think." There was a long pause. I could hear traffic in the background, which meant she was out somewhere, probably on her way to East 73rd Street. "We need to talk when you get back," she said finally. "About what?" "About our marriage. About what you want. About what I want." "What do you want, Nira?" Another pause. "I want us to be happy." "Are you happy now?" It's complicated. It doesn't have to be." I stood up and walked to the edge of the courtyard, looking out at the busy street beyond the museum. "I'll be back in New York in 10 days. We can talk then." 10 days? Brooks, I can't wait 10 days. This is important." "Then maybe you should have thought of that before you started taking rideshares to East 73rd Street." The silence that followed was so complete I thought the call had dropped. Then I heard her sharp intake of breath. "Brooks, enjoy your wellness sessions, Nira. I'll see you when I get back." I hung up and turned off my phone. "Feel good?" Selah asked. "Better than I've felt in years." We spent the rest of the day wandering through the Marais, stopping at galleries and vintage shops and cafes where Selah charmed the owners into letting her photograph their interiors. I bought her a vintage camera from a shop near the Place des Vosges, and she bought me a leather journal from a bookstore that smelled like old paper and possibilities. "For your thoughts," she said as we sat in a park watching the sunset. "You're going through something life-changing. You should document it." That night, I wrote my first entry. Day 3 in Paris. Nira called today. Sounded desperate? Good. Starting to understand the difference between being loved and being needed. Nira needs me for my money, my stability, my willingness to be invisible while she performs her life for strangers on the internet. But does she love me? Do I love her? Hard to tell the difference when you've been playing roles for so long. Selah says I'm different here. She's right. In Paris, I remember who I used to be before I became half of someone else's brand. Question is, can I stay this person when I go back to New York? Do I want to? I closed the journal and looked out at the lights of the city, already knowing the answer. I returned to New York on a Tuesday morning, 10 days later than planned, and with a phone full of increasingly frantic messages from Nira. The apartment felt smaller when I walked in, like a stage set for a play I no longer wanted to perform in. Nira was waiting in the living room, perfectly positioned on the white couch with her laptop open and a green smoothie at her elbow. She looked up when I entered, her expression cycling through relief, anger, and something that might have been fear. "You're back." "I'm back. We need to talk." I set down my suitcase and looked around the apartment. Everything was exactly as I'd left it, but somehow it all felt foreign. The expensive furniture, the carefully curated art, the view of Central Park that had once impressed me, it all looked like someone else's life. "Where's Rowan?" I asked. The question hit her like a physical blow. Her face went pale, and for a moment, the carefully constructed mask slipped completely. I don't know what you mean. Sure you do. Tall guy, looks like he was carved out of soap. Drives my BMW like he owns it. I walked to the window and looked down at the street. Speaking of which, where is my car? Brooks, please, sit down. Let me explain. Explain what? That you've been having an affair for months? That you hired a private investigator to follow me in Paris? That you've been consulting divorce lawyers about how to take half my money? I turned back to face her. Which part needs explaining, exactly? She closed her laptop and stood up, smoothing down her yoga pants in a gesture I recognized as her buying time to think. How did you know about the lawyers, the investigator, the affair? I shrugged. Turns out I'm not as oblivious as you thought. Amazing what you can learn when you stop pretending to be blind. It's not what you think. Really? Because what I think is that you've been planning to leave me for months, but you wanted to make sure you could blame me for the marriage failing. The private investigator was supposed to get photos of me cheating with your sister, right? Give you grounds for a favorable divorce settlement? Nira's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Salah told you. Salah didn't need to tell me anything. I figured it out on my own, the same way I figured out that Rowan's been staying here while I was gone. I walked to the bedroom and opened the closet. Sure enough, there were clothes hanging there that weren't mine. Expensive workout gear, designer jeans, a leather jacket that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He's got good taste, I called back to the living room. Shame about his judgment. When I returned, Nira was crying. Real tears, not the photogenic kind she used for her vulnerable Instagram posts. Brooks, please. I made a mistake. I was confused and lonely and planning to take me for half of everything I've worked for while making me look like the villain. I sat down in the chair across from her, close enough to see the panic in her eyes. That's not confusion, Nira. That's strategy. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her makeup. I was going to tell you about Rowan when you got back from Paris. I was going to be honest about everything. After you had photos of me with your sister, I needed to protect myself. From what? From being left with nothing. The words exploded out of her, raw and desperate. Do you have any idea what it's like to be married to someone who could walk away tomorrow and leave you with nothing? I gave up my career for you, Brooks. I built my whole life around being your wife. I stared at her, genuinely shocked. What career? You were a part-time yoga instructor when we met. I could have been more. I could have built something real instead of this. This performance I do every day, pretending to be happy with a man who works 16-hour days and treats me like a roommate he occasionally has dinner with. So you decided to have an affair. I decided to find someone who actually sees me, who appreciates me, who makes me feel alive instead of like a beautiful object you keep around to make yourself look successful. The honesty was startling, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Where is he now? Who? Rowan. Your soulmate. The man who makes you feel alive. She looked away. We're taking a break. A break? He needed some space to think about what he wants. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. The situation was so absurd, so perfectly fitting, that laughter was the only appropriate response. Let me guess, I said when I could speak again. He was all about leaving your limiting marriage and starting a new life together, right up until he found out that I wasn't going to make it easy for you. The minute he realized you might not get half my money in a divorce, he suddenly needed space to think. Nira's silence was answer enough. So, now you're stuck, I continued. Your affair partner has abandoned you, your divorce strategy has backfired, and your husband has just spent 2 weeks in Paris with your sister, posting photos that make it look like he's moved on completely. How's that working out for you? What do you want, Brooks? Her voice was small, defeated. I want you to move out. What? You heard me. Pack your things and move out. Today. You can't just kick me out of my own home. Watch me. I pulled out my phone and started typing. I'm texting the building manager right now, letting him know that you're no longer authorized to be here. I'm also calling the credit card company to remove you from our joint accounts, and I'm having the locks changed this afternoon. You can't do that. Actually, I can. The lease is in my name. The accounts are in my name. This apartment, this life, this whole carefully constructed image you've been performing, it's all built on my money, my credit, my work. I stood up and walked toward the bedroom. You want to find yourself? Go find yourself somewhere else. Brooks, wait. She followed me, her voice rising to a pitch that would have sent her followers running for their noise-canceling headphones. You can't just throw away 22 years of marriage because of one mistake. One mistake? I turned to face her. Nira, You've been planning to destroy me for months. You hired a private investigator. You consulted divorce lawyers. You moved another man into our home. That's not one mistake. That's a campaign. I can change. I can be better. I can be the wife you want me to be. I don't want a wife who has to perform being in love with me. I want someone who actually gives a damn whether I'm happy. I started pulling her clothes out of the closet and tossing them on the bed. Designer dresses, expensive shoes, workout gear that costs more than most people's cars. The physical representation of a lifestyle built on lies. What about my followers, my brand? I can't just disappear from social media. Sure you can. Post something about finding yourself, taking a break, focusing on personal growth. Your audience loves that inspirational garbage. Brooks, please, I'm begging you, don't do this. I stopped packing and looked at her. Really looked at her. When had she become this person? This desperate, calculating stranger who measured every relationship by its social media value. Do you love me, Nira? The question caught her off guard. What? It's a simple question. Do you love me? Not my money, not my stability, not the lifestyle I provide. Me. She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. That's what I thought. I finished packing her clothes and started carrying the suitcases to the living room. She followed me, still talking, still pleading, but I'd stopped listening. My phone was buzzing with texts from Felix, who'd apparently been monitoring the situation from his office. Building manager is on his way up. Locksmith will be there in an hour. You need anything else? I typed back, yeah, the number for that restaurant in Paris where Selah and I had dinner. I'm thinking about going back. Already? You just got home. New York feels too small all of a sudden. The building manager arrived 20 minutes later, a discreet man in an expensive suit who'd clearly dealt with situations like this before. He listened politely as Nira explained that there had been a misunderstanding, that she lived here, that her husband was having some kind of breakdown. I'm sorry, Mrs. Carven, he said when she finished, but Mr. Carven is the sole leaseholder, and he's asked that you be removed from the premises. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This is insane. Nira turned to me, her eyes wild. Brooks, you can't do this. Where am I supposed to go? Call Rebecca, I suggested. I'm sure she has a couch you can crash on. Rebecca? Your wellness consultant. The 60-year-old yoga instructor you claimed was sending you texts about tasting things. The look on her face was almost worth the past 6 months of lies. I helped carry her bags down to the lobby, more out of politeness than kindness. She kept talking the entire time, alternating between threats and promises, but I'd already moved on mentally. I was thinking about Paris, about the way the light looked different there, about the possibility of a life that wasn't built on performance and pretense. This isn't over, she said as the doorman called her a taxi. You think you can just throw me away and move on with my sister? You think people won't see right through this? People will see whatever they want to see, I said, just like they always have. The taxi pulled up, and I watched as she loaded her suitcases into the trunk. 22 years of marriage, reduced to 4 bags and a broken woman standing on a sidewalk in the afternoon sun. Goodbye, Nira. She didn't respond. She got into the taxi and drove away, leaving me standing in front of my building, feeling lighter than I had in years. I went back upstairs and called Selah. How did it go? She asked. She's gone. How do you feel? I looked around the apartment, noting how much bigger it seemed without her presence filling every corner with drama and desperation. Free, I said. I feel free. Good. So what's next? I walked to the window and looked out at Central Park, where people were living their lives without cameras or audiences or carefully crafted personas. I'm thinking about going back to Paris. When? Tomorrow. Selah laughed. I like this new version of you, Brooks. He's much more interesting than the old one. Yeah, I said, already planning my escape. I like him too. But first, I had one more thing to take care of. I opened my laptop and started typing a new Instagram post. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is discovering that the life you thought you wanted was actually holding you back. Grateful for new beginnings, honest conversations, and the courage to choose happiness over security. New chapter for authentic life. No regrets. I posted it without a photo, just words. Within minutes, the comments started pouring in. Support, curiosity, speculation about what had happened, but for the first time in years, I didn't care what people thought. I was too busy planning my real life. 3 days later, I was back in Paris, sitting in the same cafe where Selah and I had planned our first strategic Instagram post. But this time, I wasn't running away from anything. I was running towards something I couldn't quite name yet. Selah had stayed in New York to deal with the fallout from Nira's very public meltdown, because that's exactly what had happened. Within hours of my Instagram post about new beginnings, Nira had responded with a series of increasingly unhinged stories about betrayal, abandonment, and family loyalty. She'd posted crying selfies, cryptic quotes about toxic people, and thinly veiled accusations about my relationship with her sister. Her followers were eating it up. "She's lost her mind," Selah told me over FaceTime from her apartment in Brooklyn. "She showed up at my place yesterday demanding to know if we're sleeping together." "What did you tell her?" I told her it was none of her business, which apparently was the wrong answer because she posted a story about how her own family had betrayed her. I sipped my coffee and watched tourists take selfies in front of the cafe's flower boxes. "How are her numbers?" "That's the weird part. She's actually gaining followers. People love a good breakdown, apparently. She's positioning herself as the victim of a cold, calculating husband who abandoned her for her younger, prettier sister." "Is it working?" "With her core audience, yeah. But the wellness brands are starting to distance themselves. Hard to sell inner peace when you're having a very public, nervous breakdown." I opened Instagram and scrolled through Nira's recent posts. Selah was right. The content had taken a sharp turn from inspirational quotes to victim narrative. Photos of her crying in designer sunglasses, captions about betrayal and family loyalty, stories about how she'd given up everything for a man who'd thrown her away like garbage. It was masterfully manipulative, and it was working. Her comment sections were full of supporters calling me a monster and Selah a homewrecker. The narrative was simple and compelling. Successful man abandons loyal wife for her younger sister. The truth was more complicated, but truth had never been Nira's strong suit. "There's something else," Selah said, lowering her voice even though she was alone in her apartment. "I've been getting messages." "What kind of messages?" "Threats. People telling me to stay away from you, calling me names I won't repeat. Someone even found my work Instagram and started leaving nasty comments on my photography posts." I set down my coffee cup harder than I'd intended. "That's not okay." "I can handle it. But Brooks, this is getting out of control. Maybe you should come back and deal with this." "No." The word came out more forcefully than I'd planned. "I'm not coming back to play Nira's games. She wants to perform a public breakdown. Let her. But I'm not going to be her co-star anymore." "So what's the plan?" I looked around the cafe, at the couples sharing quiet conversations and the solo diners reading books without feeling the need to document every moment for social media. I'm going to live my life, publicly, happily, without her. And if she escalates, then we escalate back. That evening, I had dinner at a small restaurant near the Seine, the kind of place where the menu was written on a chalkboard and the owner personally recommended the wine. I posted a single photo. My meal, perfectly plated, with the river visible through the window behind it. The caption was simple. Good food, good wine, good company. Sometimes the best conversations are the ones you have with yourself. Paris. Solitude, grateful. Within an hour, Nira had posted a response. A photo of herself eating takeout alone in what looked like a hotel room with the caption, "When the person you trusted most leaves you with nothing. Betrayed, alone, we, still strong." The contrast was deliberate and devastating. Me, living my best life in Paris while she suffered alone in exile. Her followers responded exactly as she'd hoped, flooding my comments with accusations and demands that I do the right thing. I deleted the comments without reading them and posted another photo. A glass of wine on my hotel balcony with the Eiffel Tower sparkling in the background. Life is too short to waste on people who don't appreciate what they have. Perspective moving forward, no looking back. The war was officially on. Over the next week, our Instagram accounts became competing narratives of the same story. Nira posted about betrayal and abandonment, painting herself as a devoted wife destroyed by a heartless husband. I posted about freedom and self-discovery, showing a man finally living authentically. Her posts were emotional manipulation at its finest, crying selfies with captions about how she'd given up her dreams for our marriage, throwback photos of our early years together with nostalgic captions about lost love, inspirational quotes about surviving betrayal. My posts were subtle counter-programming, photos of beautiful meals, museum visits, quiet moments of reflection. No mention of her, no direct responses to her accusations. Just a man clearly thriving in his new life. The contrast was stark, and people began to notice. "Anyone else think there's more to this story?" Someone commented on one of Nira's crying selfies. "Why isn't she posting any actual evidence of this betrayal?" asked another. "Seems like he's moved on pretty easily. Makes you wonder what really happened." Nira's response was to double down. She posted a tearful video explaining how I'd abandoned her without warning, how I'd stolen her sister's loyalty, how I'd left her with nothing after she'd devoted her life to our marriage. The video was a masterpiece of manipulation, and it worked. Her follower count jumped by 10,000 overnight, and the comments were overwhelmingly supportive. But it also revealed something important. She was getting desperate. That's when Felix called with news that changed everything. Remember Rowan? Ken doll lifestyle coach? What about him? He's been busy while you've been in Paris, busy with someone new. I sat up straighter on my hotel bed. Who? Chelsea Morrison. Ring a bell? It did. Chelsea was another wellness influencer, younger than Nira and with twice as many followers. She was also married to a tech executive who made my income look like pocket change. How do you know this? Because he's not being subtle about it. Same playbook he used with Nira, same locations, same romantic gestures, same lifestyle coach routine. The guy's like a shark, always moving on to the next meal. I started laughing. Does Nira know? Not yet, but she will. Chelsea posted a story from that same restaurant where Rowan used to take your wife. Same table, same romantic lighting. It's only a matter of time before someone connects the dots. This is perfect. Gets better. I did some digging on our boy Rowan. Turns out he's got a pattern. 3 previous relationships with wealthy women, all ended the same way. He moves in, plays the soulmate card, then disappears when things get complicated. He's a professional. A professional something. Question is, what do you want to do with this information? I looked out my hotel window at the lights of Paris, thinking about Nira alone in whatever hotel room she was hiding in, still believing that Rowan was her ticket to a better life. Nothing, I said finally. Nothing? Let her find out on her own. It'll be more devastating that way. You're getting ruthless, Brooks. I like it. The next morning brought a series of increasingly frantic messages from Selah. Brooks, you need to see this. Check Nira's Instagram right now. Call me as soon as you get this. I opened Instagram to find that Nira had posted something new. A photo of herself and Rowan together, clearly taken recently. They were at some upscale restaurant, looking happy and in love. The caption read, "Sometimes the universe sends you exactly what you need when you need it most. Grateful for second chances and real love." New beginnings. Soulmate. Worth the wait. But something was off about the photo. The lighting was wrong, and Rowan's smile looked forced. It took me a moment to realize what I was seeing. This wasn't a recent photo. This was an old photo from their affair, posted to make it look like they were together now. I called Selah immediately. "Please tell me you saw it," she said without preamble. "I saw it. It's fake, right? Old photo?" "Has to be, because I saw Rowan yesterday." "Where?" "At a coffee shop in Soho, with Chelsea Morrison. They were all over each other, Brooks. Very publicly, very obviously together." I felt a surge of something that might have been pity for Nira. She was so desperate to salvage her narrative that she was posting old photos and pretending her affair partner hadn't abandoned her. How long before someone figures it out? Probably not long. Chelsea's been posting stories all week, and Rowan's in half of them. Someone's going to notice that he can't be in 2 relationships at the same time. Unless what? Unless we help them notice. There was a pause. "Brooks, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking it's time to stop playing defense." That afternoon, I created a fake Instagram account using a stock photo and a generic name. Then I started following both Nira and Chelsea, documenting their posts with screenshots. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. Chelsea had posted a story the day before showing Rowan's distinctive leather jacket hanging in what was clearly her apartment. The timestamp was the same day Nira had posted her reunion photo with him. I created a simple side-by-side comparison. Nira's photo claiming to be with Rowan, and Chelsea's story showing his jacket in her apartment at the exact same time. Then I posted it to a popular gossip account that specialized in influencer drama. The caption read, "When 2 influencers think they're dating the same guy at the same time, awkward. Carven, influencer drama. 1 busted, 0 who wore it better." The post went viral within hours. The comments were brutal. "Wait, isn't that Nira's boyfriend, the one she left her husband for?" "Messy. This guy is playing both of them." "Plot twist, he's actually dating Chelsea and Nira is posting old photos." "This is better than reality TV. Someone needs to tell these women they're being played." By evening, both Nira and Chelsea had been tagged in the post thousands of times. The story had been picked up by gossip blogs and influencer drama accounts. Rowangate was trending on Twitter. Nira's response was swift and devastating. She posted a long, rambling caption about being deceived by someone she trusted and learning painful truths about the people we choose to love. She didn't mention Rowan by name, but she didn't need to. Everyone knew exactly what had happened. Chelsea, meanwhile, posted a simple statement. Sometimes people aren't who they claim to be. Grateful to learn the truth before it was too late. Moving forward with grace and wisdom. Lesson learned. The contrast was telling. Chelsea came across as dignified and mature. Nira came across as unhinged and desperate, but the best part was yet to come. That evening, Rowan posted his own statement, a generic apology about making mistakes and hurting people he cared about, followed by an announcement that he was taking a step back from social media to focus on personal growth. Translation? He was running away from the mess he'd created, leaving both women to deal with the fallout alone. I called Selah to check in. How's she taking it? Not well. She's been posting stories all day, then deleting them. I think she's finally realizing that her perfect revenge plan has completely backfired. Any word from her directly? She called me this morning crying, asked if I thought you'd take her back. What did you tell her? I told her that ship had sailed. She burned it down and scattered the ashes. I looked out at the lights of Paris, feeling something that might have been satisfaction. Good. Brooks? Yeah? I'm proud of you. 6 months ago, you would have tried to fix this for her. You would have felt guilty and taken her back and pretended none of this happened. 6 months ago, I was a different person. No, Selah said softly. 6 months ago, you were pretending to be a different person. Now you're just being yourself. She was right. For the first time in years, maybe decades, I was making choices based on what I wanted instead of what was expected of me. It felt foreign and terrifying and absolutely liberating. So what's next? Selah asked. I smiled, already knowing the answer. I'm going to keep living my life, loudly, proudly, and without apology. And Nira? Nira can figure out her own life. I'm done being responsible for her happiness. That night, I posted one final photo, a glass of champagne on my hotel balcony with the caption, "Here's to new chapters, hard-earned wisdom, and the courage to choose yourself." Cheers. New life. No regrets. The likes and comments poured in, but for once, I didn't read them. I was too busy planning tomorrow's adventure. I'd been back in New York for exactly 48 hours when Nira showed up at my apartment building. The doorman called up around 9 p.m. on a Thursday, his voice carefully neutral in the way that suggested he'd been dealing with this situation for a while. "Mr. Carven, Mrs. Carven is here. She says it's urgent." I looked around my apartment, not ours, taking in the changes I'd made since returning from Paris. The walls that had once been covered with Nira's carefully curated art now displayed Selah's photographs from our trip. The coffee table that had been cluttered with wellness magazines and ring lights now held actual books and a bottle of wine I was saving for a special occasion. Tell her I'm not available. She says she'll wait. Of course she would. Nira had always been persistent when she wanted something, and right now she wanted her old life back. Too bad her old life was no longer available. I poured myself a glass of wine and settled in to wait. Through my window, I could see her on the sidewalk below, pacing back and forth in front of the building like a caged animal. She was wearing the designer coat I'd bought her last Christmas and carrying the purse that had cost more than most people's monthly salary. Even in crisis, Nira understood the importance of maintaining appearances. My phone buzzed with a text from Felix. "Heads up, your ex-wife has been making calls, trying to find dirt on you, Selah. Anyone in your orbit? So far she's coming up empty, but she's getting desperate." I typed back, "How desperate?" Desperate enough to offer my contact $5,000 for compromising photos of you and Selah. When that didn't work, she tried to hire someone to hack your social media accounts. I almost laughed. Even in her downfall, Nira was thinking like an influencer. Everything was content to her. Every problem could be solved with the right narrative and enough social media manipulation. Another text from Felix. "There's more. She's been reaching out to your business contacts, trying to convince them that you're having some kind of breakdown. Says you abandoned your wife for a younger woman and can't be trusted professionally." This was more serious. My consulting business depended on reputation and trust. If Nira succeeded in damaging my professional relationships, she could actually hurt me in ways that mattered. I called Felix immediately. "How bad is it?" "Not bad yet, but she's persistent. Most of your clients know you well enough to see through it, but she only needs one or two to take her seriously." "What's her endgame?" "Best guess? She's trying to force you into a reconciliation. If she can damage your business and your reputation, she thinks you'll come crawling back to restore the status quo. I looked down at the street where Nira was still pacing, now talking animatedly on her phone, probably calling in reinforcements or plotting her next move. She's underestimating me. Most people do. It's your secret weapon. Felix, I need you to do something for me. Name it. I need you to organize a party, something public, high profile, the kind of event that gets photographed and written about. What kind of party? I smiled, the plan forming in my mind like pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. A celebration, new business launch, new life, new everything. I want to show the world exactly how much I'm not having a breakdown. When? This weekend, Saturday night. And Felix, I want you to make sure Nira knows about it. You want her to crash your party? I want her to have the opportunity to make a choice. She can move on with dignity, or she can make a scene and destroy what's left of her reputation. Either way, I win. By Friday morning, the plan was in motion. Felix had rented a penthouse event space in Tribeca, hired caterers and photographers, and sent invitations to everyone who mattered in my professional and social circles. The official reason was to celebrate the launch of my new consulting firm, something I'd been considering for months but hadn't acted on until now. The real reason was to show New York that Brooks Carven was not a man in crisis. He was a man in control. Salah arrived early Saturday evening to help with final preparations. She was wearing a black dress that photographed beautifully and carrying a camera to document the evening. Over the past month, she'd become my unofficial photographer and social media strategist, helping me craft a narrative that was authentic but polished. You know she's going to show up, Sela said as we reviewed the guest list. I'm counting on it. And if she makes a scene, then she makes a scene, in front of 50 influential people with cameras. The guests started arriving at 7. Tech executives, marketing directors, a few journalists, and several social media personalities who weren't in Nira's immediate circle, but who had enough followers to make their attendance meaningful. I'd also invited some of our old mutual friends, people who had been caught in the middle of our separation and weren't sure whose side to take. By 8 o'clock, the party was in full swing. People were mingling, drinking expensive wine, and posting photos with hashtags like Hansa New Beginnings and Anjao Brooks Carven Consulting. The narrative was exactly what I'd hoped for. Successful businessman celebrates new venture surrounded by friends and colleagues. I was talking to a potential client about a data security project when I saw her. Nira stood in the doorway like a ghost from my past, wearing the red dress she'd worn to our last anniversary dinner. She'd clearly put effort into her appearance, perfect makeup, professionally styled hair, the kind of smile she used for important photos. But there was something desperate in her eyes that no amount of preparation could hide. The room didn't exactly go quiet when she entered, but there was a definite shift in energy. People who knew our story started whispering to people who didn't. Phones came out as guests realized they might be witnessing some kind of confrontation. I excused myself from my conversation and walked over to her. "Hello, Nira?" "Brooks." Her voice was softer than I'd expected, almost vulnerable. "Thank you for inviting me." "I didn't invite you, but you knew I'd come. I hoped you wouldn't." She flinched as if I'd slapped her, but recovered quickly. "Can we talk? Privately?" I looked around the room at the 50 people who were pretending not to watch our every move. "This is as private as it gets." "Brooks, please, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Against my better judgment, I led her to a quiet corner near the windows overlooking the city. The lights of Manhattan spread out below us like a circuit board, beautiful and impersonal. "You look good," she said. "I feel good." "I've been watching your social media. Paris looked amazing." It was. I always wanted to go to Paris. "I know." She was quiet for a moment, staring out at the city lights. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I made a mistake, Brooks. A huge, terrible mistake. I was scared and confused, and I handled everything wrong. You hired a private investigator to follow me. I was trying to protect myself. You moved another man into our home. I was lonely. You consulted divorce lawyers about taking half my money. I was planning for the worst-case scenario." I turned to face her fully. "Nira, do you hear yourself? You're describing a military campaign, not a marriage. I know how it sounds, but it sounds like you never loved me. It sounds like I was just a lifestyle you were borrowing until you found something better." Tears started forming in her eyes, and for a moment she looked like the woman I'd married 22 years ago, young, vulnerable, genuinely sorry for hurting someone she cared about. "That's not true," she whispered. "I did love you. I do love you." "No," I said gently. "You love what I provided. You love the security, the status, the ability to play the role of the successful wife. But you don't love me." "How can you say that?" Because if you loved me, you would have talked to me when you were unhappy instead of planning my destruction. If you loved me, you would have ended our marriage honestly instead of trying to manipulate me into being the villain. She was crying now, real tears that were ruining her carefully applied makeup. Several people were openly staring, and I could see phones recording from multiple angles. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. "How do I fix this?" "You don't. It's not fixable, Nira. We're not fixable." "But we could try. We could go to counseling or take a trip together or—" "I don't want to." The words lingered between us like a final verdict. She looked at me as though I'd spoken in another language. "What?" "I don't want to fix this. I don't want to go to counseling or take a trip or pretend that we can go back to the way things were. I want to move forward with my life, and that life doesn't include you." "You can't mean that." "I've never meant anything more." She looked around the room at the people who were watching us, at the cameras that were documenting her humiliation, at the life I was building without her. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. The vulnerability was gone, replaced by something harder. "This is about her, isn't it? About Sela. This is about me choosing to be happy. You're sleeping with my sister. I'm living my life. Answer the question, Brooks. Are you sleeping with my sister?" The room had gone completely quiet now. Everyone was listening, waiting for my response to the question that had been circulating on social media for weeks. I looked across the room at Sela, who was watching our conversation with concern and something that might have been affection. She was beautiful, intelligent, kind, and genuinely interested in who I was as a person rather than what I could provide. Over the past month, we'd become close in a way that felt both natural and terrifying. Were we sleeping together? Not yet, but we could be. We probably would be. And for the first time in years, that possibility felt like hope rather than obligation. "That's none of your business," I said finally. Nira's face crumpled. "Oh my God, you are. You're sleeping with my sister. I'm not having this conversation with you. How could you do this to me? How could she do this to me? The same way you did it to me with Rowan. The difference is, I'm not married anymore." She slapped me. Hard. The sound echoed through the quiet room like a gunshot, and for a moment, nobody moved. Then the cameras started clicking. "Feel better?" I asked, touching my cheek where her hand had connected. "You destroyed my life." "No, Nira, you destroyed your life. I just stopped letting you destroy mine too." Security appeared at my elbow. Felix is doing, no doubt. Two large men in suits who looked like they'd handled situations like this before. "Ma'am, we're going to have to ask you to leave," one of them said politely. "This is my husband," Nira shrieked, her composure finally cracking completely. "This is my life. You can't just throw me out." "Actually, they can," I said. "This is a private event, and you're not invited." She looked around the room one more time, at the faces staring back at her with mixtures of pity and disgust, at the phones still recording her breakdown. When she spoke again, her voice was raw with desperation. "You'll regret this, Brooks. When you're alone and miserable with someone who doesn't really know you, you'll regret throwing away 22 years for a fantasy." "Maybe," I said, "but I doubt it." Security escorted her to the elevator while she continued to shout about betrayal and family loyalty and how I'd destroyed an innocent woman's life. The doors closed on her voice, and the room slowly returned to normal conversation. "Well," said someone behind me, "that was intense." I turned to find one of the journalists I'd invited, a woman who wrote about tech industry drama for a major business publication. "Off the record," I asked, "if you want." My marriage was over long before tonight. The only question was whether it would end with dignity or destruction. Apparently, we have our answer. She nodded and walked away, probably already composing her article in her head. By tomorrow, the story would be everywhere. Successful tech consultant's ex-wife crashes his party, makes scene, gets ejected by security. The narrative would write itself. Sela appeared at my side, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. "You okay?" "Better than okay." I took the champagne and raised it in a toast. To new beginnings. "To choosing yourself," she corrected, clinking her glass against mine. We drank, and I looked around the room at the people who were still here, still celebrating, still treating me like someone worth knowing. These were my people now, not because they were impressed by my money or my wife's Instagram following, but because they respected what I'd built and who I was becoming. My phone buzzed with a text from Felix. "Nira's in the lobby, crying and calling reporters. Want me to have her removed from the building?" I typed back, "Let her stay. Let her call whoever she wants. I'm done hiding from my own life." The party continued until almost midnight. People ate, drank, networked, and celebrated the launch of something new. By the time the last guest left, I had 3 new clients, a dozen business cards, and a social media feed full of photos that told the story I wanted told. Brooks Carven was not a man in crisis. He was a man in control of his destiny. Selah stayed to help clean up, moving around the empty space with the easy familiarity of someone who belonged there. We worked in comfortable silence, packing up leftover food and stacking chairs until the space looked like it had when we'd arrived. "So," she said as we waited for the elevator, "what happens now? Now we go home. Tomorrow we wake up and figure out what comes next. And Nira?" I thought about my ex-wife, probably still in the lobby downstairs, trying to convince reporters that she was the victim of a cruel husband and a disloyal sister. Tomorrow, there would be articles and social media posts and probably another round of crying selfies. There would be attempts to control the narrative and manipulate public opinion. But none of that was my problem anymore. Nira will do whatever Nira does, I said. I'll do what I do. And hopefully, those two things will have nothing to do with each other. The elevator arrived and we stepped inside. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the polished metal. I looked different than I had 6 months ago, older maybe, but also somehow lighter. Like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't even realize was there until I set it down. "Brooks," Selah's voice was soft in the enclosed space. "For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice." "Which choice?" "All of them." The elevator reached the ground floor, and the doors opened onto the lobby. Nira was gone, but I could see her through the windows, standing on the sidewalk in her red dress, talking on her phone with animated gestures. Still performing, still trying to control a story that had already been written. I walked past her without looking back, Selah beside me, heading toward whatever came next. For the first time in years, I couldn't wait to find out what that would be.